Imagine YouTube had been around like 10, 15 years earlier and I was 10 or 15 years older. This is the video I would have made. 10 cars, all from the 1990s, that I think are pretty cool for the money and all cost less than £15,000. 1,000 likes for the same video again for the 1980s instead. Do subscribe as well for 2 videos every single week, and without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's kick this video off with one of the most iconic shapes in the history of cars, not just the 90s, the Mini Cooper, which is a car that arrived all the way back in 1959, but had quite a few owners over the course of its life, including Rover, who produced these 1990s examples. This little car comes with a 1.3 litre inline-4 engine, which makes 62 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in a sedate time of 12.2 seconds, but of course, speed isn't really the core focus of a Mini. If you're after a 90s Mini, it will either be a Mark 6 or a Mark 7, and the Mark 7 came with a bunch more modern features, including safety bits like a driver's side airbag, meaning the crumple zone isn't necessarily your face anymore. What's amazing about this car is that it ran on beyond the Metro, which was originally the car that was supposed to take its place, showing just how iconic this car really is. They'll run you around £8,000 at the bottom end, and £15,000 will get you a 1998 model with 40,000 miles on the clock. Generally, it's rust that causes the most headaches with these. One of the best looking classic cars you can get into within our price range from the 90s has to be the Jaguar XJ, which does come as both a convertible and coupe, but that coupe has the stunning sloping roofline at the rear that does look incredibly unique. There are multiple engine options available, including a 6-litre V12, which makes 306 brake horsepower, the most on this list, taking it to 60 in 8 seconds. Not particularly quick, but plenty for its purpose as a Grand Tourer. It arrived in 1975, but ran through to 1996, so across its multiple generations, over 100,000 were built in total. That's why prices have ended up pretty low, as they are listed anywhere from around the 7k mark, with £15,000 getting you into a 1990 example with around 70,000 miles on the clock. If you're after a 1990s model, it will be a final facelift one, which came after Ford took over the brand and relaunched the car, minus the hyphen, with that larger V12. Ford helped make the car more aerodynamic and less complicated to build and work on, simplifying parts like the brakes. Electrical issues are known still though, even if the V12 was pretty dependable. The Peugeot 205 GTI is definitely one of the best hot hatches ever, and has been the basis for many race and rally cars over the years, with the T16 twice winning the World Rally Championship in the Group B era under Timo Salonen and Juha Kankkunen. It came with 2 engine options, including a 1.9 litre inline-4 producing 130 brake horsepower, the least on this list, but it will still get to 60 in 7.9 seconds. The 205's arrival moved Peugeot into a world of fun cars during the super mini boom of the 1980s, running through to the 1990s, and still today remains many people's benchmarks for fast Peugeots ever since. Part of that fun was also reflected in some of the best automotive advertisements in history. Engine-wise, if you go for the smaller 1.6, you get a car that is known to be more fun to rev, whereas the 1.9 is slightly more focused on being torquey and slightly more powerful, but either way, they are known to be reliable with the right maintenance. 10k is about enough to get you into one of these, and it will be a 1991 example with high mileage for that kind of money. The Mark II Toyota MR2 is my personal favourite looking generation, whether you go coupe or T-top convertible. I love the flowing lines that are a telltale sign of the 90s era when compared with the more boxy first generation. In the UK, we got the 2-litre inline-4 example that puts out 168 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 7.7 seconds, not quite as quick as the turbo model though that Japan got. Some people name this car the baby Ferrari or poor man's Ferrari, as it doesn't look a million miles away from the Ferrari 348 or 308 if you squint really hard. There were murmurings of it getting a V6 engine to compete with those Ferraris, but Toyota sadly stopped that rumour in its tracks by saying it would belong in the Lexus branding instead, but that would have been cool anyway, to really match an engine to the aesthetics. It's a car with a massive aftermarket too, so though it is becoming a classic, it's quite easy to find examples that have been heavily modified, so do watch out for that. These start at around the 6k mark, and 15k will get you into a 1997 model with 50k on it. This one only just arrived at the end of the 90s, but the Ford Mondeo ST200 is an absolutely stunning fast Ford that remains available within our price range and has some proper touring car style pedigree. That pedigree includes a 2.5 litre V6 engine that makes 202 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 7.7 seconds, and it sounds pretty good doing it. The formula is not too dissimilar to the fast Fords of the modern era, with super stiff suspension, Recaro bucket seats, and a racier exterior, which also came in a set few colours, with Ford's iconic Imperial Blue being the main one. It also came in Diamond White too, specifically for use as police cars in the UK. I honestly think whatever colour you go for, with the Mondo ending production back in 2022, these are surefire future classics. It also had an American equivalent, the SVT Contour, but it's not quite as good looking with the American requirements around front front bumpers, it looks a bit like an ST200 with too much lip filler. These will run you around £6,000 at the bottom end, and £15,000 to get you into a final year model with high mileage. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you are, then do hit the like button. As I said, 1,000 likes, do the same video again for the 1980s instead. And let me know in the comments down below, what is your favourite car from the 1990s? I'm thinking maybe F50. It's a pretty cool car. I'm probably missing a whole bunch of cool cars though. Taking fifth on the list, we have the BMW 840 Ci, which is a pretty strange looking BMW for its time, as only a few cars like the M1 and Z1 had similar sports car stylings and was BMW's main Grand Tourer offering. To help cruise along in comfort, they come with a 4-litre V8 block, making 286 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.7 seconds, which is good as that engine is therefore pretty understressed, and the main problems come from the non-engine related parts. This is about as 90s as it gets, as it ran from 1990 to 1999, after which the 8 Series nameplate perished until its resurrection in 2018. Sadly, that's a result of it suffering from a turbulent era financially, as sales weren't what BMW expected, hence they cancelled the creation of what would have been an incredible M8 version of the car. But even in 840 Ci spec, it looks good, sounds good, and in Europe at least you could get it in manual as well as automatic. They'll run you around £11,000 at the bottom end, and 15k gets you a 1997 model that's done 90,000 miles, and reliability isn't supposed to be too horrendous on them. The Type R from the 3rd generation Honda Integra has been steadily increasing in price over the past few years, and the best examples have recently sold for over £100,000. Fortunately though, you don't need to be a collector to get into one, as this beautiful front wheel drive sports car starts at around the 11k mark nowadays, with 15k being enough for a final year model with 50,000 miles on the clock. That'll get you into a 1.8 litre inline 4 block that makes you 187 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.5 seconds, helped of course by Honda's typical VTEC setup. This first arrived for the Japanese domestic market, and of course was modified before it hit other markets globally to basically be less aggressive in a few ways. Don't let that detract from the car though, it's still considered to be one of the best Hondas ever when you put it up against its in-era competition. It was received so well that it was put in comparisons with the R33 Skyline GTR and the Type RA Impreza WRX STI, which are both much faster, but it still held a candle to them in terms of driving experience. Taking third, we have a car with a pretty massive cult following that definitely has some real classic potential too, the Fiat Coupe 20 valve turbo, often given names like the poor man's Ferrari as well as the MR2. Honestly, this crisp angle exterior design and Pininfarina interior design merges together to make something super cool and super 90s vibes. Even cooler is that 2-litre turbocharged inline-5 engine, which makes 220 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.5 seconds, and sounds like a baby V10 with the right exhaust. There was actually some competition between Pininfarina and Chris Bangle for the exterior design, and with Chris winning, Pininfarina had a design with no car to attach it to until Peugeot took it for the 406 Coupe, which is another great looking car. Though the Fiat is known for cracking manifolds and rust, it's becoming increasingly cherished these days. People buy to restore or buy restored examples to keep and enjoy, and one of those two ownership experiences is basically what I'd expect with one now. To get into one, you'll need to spend around 6k at the bottom end, and 15k will nab you a 1998 model with 50k on the clock. The 996 Porsche 911 generation is often considered to be the least desirable when compared to its peers, so getting a base Carrera 2 is about as undesirable as you can get for a 911. But having driven some 996s now, I can actually tell you I really like them, and even in base spec, they're pretty rapid compared to the previous 8 cars on this list. You'll only get an earlier model within our price range, which means you'll get a 3.4 litre flat 6 block, producing 300 brake horsepower, taking you to 60 in 5 seconds, 1.5 seconds quicker than the Fiat, so we're really jumping ahead. These handle beautifully as you'd expect of a 911, and by going for a 2 you get the proper rear wheel drive experience a lot of purist 911 fans are after. If you're willing to overlook or even grow fond of the controversial headlights and the water cooling instead of air cooling which sent purists into a frenzy, you're getting a beautiful part of the 911's rich history. Just watch out for the multiple bearing failures and bore scoring. They start at around the 10k mark, and 15k gets you a high mileage 1998 model. Taking the top spot on this list, we have the Subaru Impreza WRX STI Type RA version 3, which I was lucky enough to find literally at our 15k limit from 1996 with 90,000 miles on the clock. I can't imagine you'll find many within our price range however, as these have very much been going up in price over the past few years. This came during the Japanese Gentleman's Agreement era, meaning it reportedly puts out 276 brake horsepower from its 2-litre turbocharged Boxer 4 engine, taking it to 60 in 4.7 seconds, although there are multiple reports of it putting out over 300 brake horsepower when you ignore that agreement. What's special about these is that they arrived as part part of the company's new STI division, which was built to drastically upgrade the cars and prepare them for racing in the World Rally Championship. The road equivalents were therefore effectively homologation cars, and whatever you end up with from this generation, you're buying into the first four-door Impreza generation that is genuinely showing signs of future classic status. Bad ECUs, heat soak, and rust are some of the most known issues on these. And so there you have it, 10 cars from the 90s that cost less than £15,000. If you want to see some more videos just like this, click on screen right now. Huge thanks to the patrons for their support, and to you guys well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.